December 28, 1991. A hospital room. Quiet. Too quiet. A 38-year-old actor sits beside the bed of the woman he loves, holding her hand, for the last time. To the world, he is one of the most charming faces on television. Smooth. Confident. The kind of man people trust the moment he walks into a room. But right now, none of that matters. His wife, Cassandra, is gone. Taken by ovarian cancer, after a 4-year fight that included 8 operations, and round after round of chemotherapy. He is left standing alone with 3 children who are not even teenagers yet. And here is what nobody knew that night: this moment was not the end of his pain. It was only the beginning. Because 22 years later, lightning would strike this same family again. In almost the exact same way. And the man at the center of it all would have to find a way to keep standing, in front of cameras, in front of fans, in front of his own children. While carrying a grief most people never have to imagine even once. This is the real story of Pierce Brosnan. Not the spy. Not the tuxedo. Not the charm the world fell in love with. This is the man underneath all of it. Because behind that famous James Bond smile, was a story of loss that would test him again, and again, and again. Stay with this one. It gets heavier than you'd expect. It starts long before the fame. Pierce Brosnan was born in Ireland in 1953, and his childhood was nothing like the glamorous life people imagine when they hear his name. His father left when he was just a baby. A few years later, his mother packed up and moved to London to find work, leaving young Pierce behind to be raised by his grandparents, and then by relatives who weren't always kind. He had no example of what a father was supposed to be. No one to copy. He once admitted that whatever instincts he had as a parent, he had to build from nothing. Eventually, he joined his mother in London. A new country. A new stepfather. A boy trying to find where he belonged. And then, almost by accident, he found acting. It gave him something he had never had growing up, an identity. A place to finally belong. By his 20s he was working steadily on stage, picking up small television roles. And then came the moment that would change everything. In 1980, he met and married Australian actress Cassandra Harris. She already had 2 children, Charlotte and Christopher, from a previous marriage. Pierce stepped into their lives, and after their biological father passed away, he made it official: he adopted them both. Soon after, he and Cassandra had a son of their own, Sean. For the very first time in his life, Pierce had what he never had as a child. A real family. One that was his. And then his career exploded right alongside it. In 1982, he landed the lead role in Remington Steele, and almost overnight he became one of the most recognizable faces in America. He was even offered the role of James Bond not long after, only to lose it because his television contract wasn't finished in time. The biggest opportunity of his life, slipping through his fingers. To everyone watching from the outside, Pierce Brosnan had it all. Good looks. A rising career. A beautiful family. Charm that made him impossible not to like. But behind closed doors, something was already changing. In 1987, doctors gave Cassandra a diagnosis that would quietly take over the family's entire world. Ovarian cancer. Pierce kept working. He kept smiling for the cameras. But at home, a battle had already begun, one the public wouldn't understand for years. What looked like the perfect Hollywood story, was about to take a turn nobody saw coming. For 4 years, Pierce lived 2 completely different lives. In public, he was the rising star. The leading man. The face audiences trusted. In private, he was a husband watching the woman he loved fight for her life, one operation at a time. 8 surgeries. Endless chemotherapy. Pierce later said the disease didn't just threaten her, it invaded every part of who she was. This wasn't a small scare. This was a war. And through all of it, he kept showing up to work. Partly because life doesn't stop for grief. Partly because, as he admitted years later, staying busy was the only way he knew how to survive the fear. He never spoke about it publicly. No interviews. No statements. The Hollywood machine kept moving, and Pierce smiled through premieres while his wife fought for her life at home. His children were far too young for any of this. Sean was still just a little boy. Charlotte and Christopher were teenagers trying to process something most adults can barely process. And Pierce had to be strong for all three of them, even when he had no idea how to be strong for himself. People close to him noticed the change. The charm was still there on camera. But underneath it, he was a man trying to hold an entire family together with one hand, while grief slowly tightened its grip with the other. By late 1991, it became clear. Her body could not fight any longer. But no one, not even Pierce, could have predicted just how much harder things were about to get. On December 28, 1991, Cassandra Harris died. She was only 43 years old. Pierce was left to raise 3 children alone. Sean, just 8. Christopher and Charlotte, still teenagers. He later described the darkness that settled over him in the years that followed, a quiet sadness that never fully left, even on his best days. But grief doesn't move through a family evenly. Each child carried it differently. And for one of them, the pain would turn into something far more dangerous. Christopher, still a teenager when his mother died, began to spiral. What started as anger and confusion slowly turned into something darker. Addiction. Year after year, it got worse, until Pierce had to make one of the hardest decisions a parent can ever make. He had to step back. Cut contact. Hoping tough love might save his son's life where soft love couldn't. Meanwhile, Sean, only 8 when his mother died, later admitted he didn't even understand what death meant until months afterward. And when the truth finally hit him, it hit hard. Isolation. Rebellion. Years of struggling quietly while the world only saw a famous family moving on. And quietly, almost unnoticed by anyone outside the family, doctors had already started watching Charlotte closely. Because of her mother's history, she began regular checkups years before anyone expected trouble. Pierce had even warned, back in the early 90s, that this disease moves silently. You don't see it coming, until it's already there. No one wanted to believe that warning would ever apply to her. But sometimes the past doesn't just repeat itself. Sometimes it comes back wearing a different face. And this time, it would strike somewhere no one expected. Life slowly found its footing again. In 1994, on a business trip to Mexico, Pierce met journalist Keely Shea Smith. They fell in love. In 2001 they married, eventually welcoming 2 more sons, Dylan and Paris. For the first time in years, it looked like this family had finally found peace. His career reached new heights too. After losing his shot at James Bond once before, he was finally cast as 007 in 1995's GoldenEye. The role that once slipped through his fingers became the defining performance of his life. To the outside world, the story had a happy ending. Then came June 28, 2013. Charlotte. The same daughter who had quietly started cancer screenings decades earlier because of her mother's history, was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. She fought for 3 years. And on that day in June, surrounded by her husband and her 2 children, she passed away. She was only 41 years old. Almost the same disease. Almost the same fight. Almost the same heartbreak her mother had endured 22 years before her. The same family. The same cancer. 2 generations, taken by the exact same disease. For Pierce, this wasn't just grief. This was grief layered on top of grief. A wound that had never fully healed, torn open all over again. He had spent years quietly carrying the loss of his first wife. Now he had to bury her daughter too. The reaction was immediate. Overwhelming. Fans who only ever saw Pierce as the suave secret agent were suddenly confronted with the reality of a man who had survived more heartbreak than most people face in an entire lifetime. And the hardest part, the story still wasn't over. Because for the Brosnan family, the road ahead still had more turns left to take. In the years that followed Charlotte's death, Pierce made a choice that surprised many people. Instead of staying silent the way he had with Cassandra's illness decades earlier, this time, he spoke out. At cancer fundraising events, he opened up about what it felt like to watch the people he loved be slowly worn down by the disease. He described it as watching life get eaten away, piece by piece. He became an advocate for ovarian cancer awareness, hoping his family's pain might somehow save someone else's life. But the damage didn't stop with him. His stepson Christopher's addiction battle stretched on for 2 full decades. A near-fatal overdose. Stints in rehab that never seemed to hold. 20 years of silence between father and son, broken only by the occasional message Pierce posted online, telling Christopher he loved him no matter how far apart they had grown. And through all of it, Pierce never stopped working. He kept building one of the most respected careers in Hollywood, proving there was real range behind the tuxedo. But anyone who looked closely could see it. His on-screen confidence had been built on a foundation of real, lived pain. The kind that never shows up in a highlight reel. And just when it seemed like this family's story might end on another note of distance and loss, something nobody expected happened. Decades after cutting ties, Pierce and Christopher were finally seen together again. Sharing dinner in London. Smiling. At ease. Like the lost years hadn't broken them after all. It was a quiet, human moment, after a lifetime of headlines. Today, at 73, Pierce Brosnan is still working. Still showing up. He's built a life with Keely and their sons, while carrying the memory of Cassandra and Charlotte with him every single day. He has said grief never fully leaves. You just learn to live alongside it. His story was never really about James Bond. It was about a man who lost almost everything, more than once, and chose, again and again, to keep going anyway. So tell me, how do you think someone carries this much loss, and still keeps showing up for the people around them? Would you have handled it the way Pierce did? Let me know in the comments, I read every single one. And if stories like this move you, the real, human side of Hollywood you don't usually get to see, subscribe. There's another one coming soon, and you won't want to miss it. It was about a man who lost almost everything, more than once, and chose, again and again, to keep going anyway. So tell me, how do you think someone carries this much loss, and still keeps showing up for the people around them? Would you have handled it the way Pierce did? Let me know in the comments, I read every single one. And if stories like this move you, the real, human side of Hollywood you don't usually get to see, subscribe. There's another one coming soon, and you won't want to miss it.